Moving on to insomnia studies, we have Dr. Taylor at the University of Virginia and Dr. Lick Brown, who we've already discussed doing at Robert Wood Johnson Medical School, looking at insomnia and fibromyalgia patients who are notorious for not being able to sleep. And Dr. Taylor found very significant results over a 8-week period. Here's her graph from her about-to-be-published study. So the active group, but not the sham group and not the usual care group, had achieved significant results of p equals 0.0001 and a small effect size of 0.3. And her patients completed the study, subjects with scores below the range of insomnia. Dr. Lick Brown did a double-blind study where most of the patients, the blue line here represents most of the patients going into the study had sleep problems over here, and very few of the patients had good restful sleep. And at the end of 3 weeks, you see virtually a mirror image of those results. People were able to sleep. Only 5% of the people going into the study were able to sleep, and it was about 5% of the people or less going out at the end of 3 weeks that had sleep difficulties. Dr. Mellon, who we saw had failed the state anxiety study that was because the measures were taken a week after the end of the study, did find significant effects in sheriffs, jails, security, and patrol officers in the state of Alabama, where CES group had significantly less depression than the sham group on both the Beck Depression Inventory and the Brief Symptom Inventory for depression. And Dr. Bystrzycki's group at UCLA had good effects on the HAM-D scale at p is less than 0.01. As well, we have checked last week, and we have 27 studies of Alpha-Stim right now underway throughout the world. A lot of people call me a data junkie. I love research. And so these are the studies underway right now that are being funded by the United States government. The first 4, and these are all on anxiety, depression, insomnia, or at least one of the above, and perhaps some other things. And the first 4 are being done by the United States Army, our biggest customer, and one is being done by the DeBakey VA in Houston in conjunction with Baylor University. The final one is being conducted near here at Virginia Commonwealth University, VCU, and it's funded by the National Cancer Institute of the National Institutes of Health, and it's primarily on depression in breast cancer patients. And of course, it's also looking at anxiety and insomnia because these are common comorbidities. These things tend to function as a group. Okay, important for the next aspect of our presentation is this finding that was published in the Journal of Clinical Epidemiology a few years ago that said one single question on a Likert or a VAS scale, which the FDA is trying to throw out as being irrelevant. Actually, they threw out all of our studies for little bureaucratic technicalities. We ask you to be less biased and more objective in your analysis of truth. And so here we see a single question correlating well with the state trait anxiety index, which is the most validated test in anxiety. It's not the HAM-A, it's the STAI, Spielberger's test. And this was correlated at the 95% confidence interval. Keeping that in mind, we have done surveys. We constantly do surveys. Everybody who gets an Alpha-Stim gets a survey. And, they don't all respond, but they all get a chance to. So this is a military service member survey and a civilian survey. The blue bar, the third bar down on these 3 anxiety, insomnia, and depression charts, the blue one is service members, and the one below that, the purple one, is civilian survey. And this is the people who are reporting an effective result. And it compares very favorably to drugs that you all are aware of, because these are the blockbuster major drugs used in these indications. And that comes from a WebMD ongoing survey that we accessed here in October of last year. So for anxiety, it compares well with Xanax and Ativan. For insomnia, Lunesta and Sonata. And for depression, Zoloft and Wellbutrin. It not only compares well, but in some cases a little better than these drugs. And you have a copy of this entire survey. In fact, it's on the cover of this book we gave you, and I urge you to look at this book. The FDA says, oh, don't look at that. That's just anecdotal. But that's people who use it. I don't think the FDA reviewers, whoever they might be, are using this or have ever seen a CES device. So read this. You have colonels in the Army. You have one general. And you have a priest, a chaplain. You have all kinds of people who use this, who are qualified. Lots of psychiatrists in here. So read that, please. Look at them. So this is the most stringent measure of clinical importance that we could find in the literature. According to Dworkin, 30 to 49% is considered of moderate clinical importance, and greater than 50% improvement in a patient is considered substantial clinical importance. And here you can see that we met the criteria of substantial clinical importance in all the areas. Because this was a military survey, we called out PTSD. However, that is an anxiety disorder as well. And I don't know what happened to these slides. My slide doesn't look like this. But this one says 60% on the civilian population. This is annoying. You have white copies that we gave you hard copies, but this says that 60% of the 1,745 responders to a civilian survey improved at least 50%. So that confirms the last slide. All of this information is cross-confirming. And this is a comparison of effectiveness data at p-values with TMS. Again, this information comes from the FDA executive summary to this panel in 2007 that we pulled off of the FDA website. So these numbers are absolutely correct. We have given you 6 RCTs in anxiety. We've seen p-values between 0.0001 to 0.02. This was confirmed in open clinical, well-conducted open clinical trials, which meets the definition of valid scientific evidence in the Code of Federal Regulations. And those results is p equals 0.01 to p is less than 0.05. This compares favorably with the data from TMS. The original finding of the first arm of their 3-arm study showed minimally clinically interesting difference between the treatment groups, and their results were p equals 0.057. However, when 4 of the active and 2 of the sham subjects were thrown out, and there was a reanalysis done on the statistics, they did achieve significance, and they did achieve significance on secondary measures, and I do agree that they have achieved significance since then in other studies. So when we looked at the pooled effect size, we can see that ours is 91.91, which comes from the previous slide that you've seen, and this compares favorably with the small effect sizes, small to medium. This slide somehow got corrupted since we've sent it to FDA, but that says medium down there, and that basically ours is small, medium, 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 large, and very large. There's a small, small, and medium. And so, again, it compares favorably with TMS. And the reason we're harping on that is because this panel reviewed TMS in 2007, and the FDA classified it as Class 2 in the Federal Register July last year, 1 week before they treated us the exact opposite way. So they're being arbitrary and capricious about this between these two technologies. So based on the Alpha-Stim research that I've just presented to you, when taken as a whole, which is in the regulations, that wording, when taken as a whole, you're supposed to look at it when taken as a whole. The 10 studies that I just presented provide significant results supporting a finding of reasonable assurance of safety and effectiveness. That's your job here today. Alpha-Stim is safe and effective for the treatment of anxiety, insomnia, and depression, and these conditions are ubiquitous in all patient populations. Patient population is meaningless. Since August of last year, every psychiatrist I've talked to, and I talked to several a day, I've asked this question too, and not one said, you're wrong. Every single one said, you're right. There is no distinction in patient populations for these 3 conditions. When you go to the dentist, you have anxiety. I'll bet some of you have been to the dentist and have experienced that. Did you ever notice how hard you're holding the chair? That's anxiety. All right. So adverse effects were mild and self-limiting in all our studies and across all the information for 31 years. So there won't be any surprises. A PMA is not going to accomplish a thing except put a huge burden on my small company Now, I would, in some ways, prefer a PMA, but I have a PMA pending at FDA since 1995, and they treated us horrendously about it. They only met with us once, and at that time, the director of the Office of Advice Evaluation for Centers for Devices and CDRH said that there are no safety issues. So again, I think you could just put that one to sleep. Why isn't the FDA today talking about what the head of the Office of Device Evaluation said in 1996 meeting, I believe, as opposed to what the panel was chatting about in the 1970s, before I was in business for 31 years? We should talk about truth and reality. Okay, so we have significant effects. We have no serious or hardly any adverse effects to speak of whatsoever. It's sold over the counter outside this country, every place else in the world where it's been approved. And don't think it's easy to get it approved in other places. And don't think that general controls are easy. The FDA comes into our office every 2 years. Europe comes in every year. And these are not fun times when they come in to inspect us. Europe works with us. FDA works against us. They're looking for, aha, gotcha. But we're still in business even though we've had these inspections all this time. So today we have seen that there is reasonable assurance of safety and effectiveness for Alpha-Stim CES and no evidence of the contrary in 31 years of marketing, with well over 10, probably more than 20 million treatments administered. Therefore, we respectfully request that you recommend down classification of Alpha-Stim CES for the conditions of anxiety, depression, and insomnia. And I thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions, because I wish I had 3 or 4 days to spend talking to you about my life's work, 30 years. 1 day per 10 years seems reasonable. 45 minutes, I hope I've educated you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.